Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us at our webinar. It is Thursday, the 26th of January. Hope your month is going well so far, and the beginning of the year is not flying by as quickly as I think it is. I just took my Christmas decorations down last weekend, so I know that the year is going by much faster than I can move. I appreciate you joining us. And Charles has some great stuff to tell us about. We're going to be talking about Dash and ESS logging in. Seems to be a constant question that we get of how do I get logged in, or I'm stuck, I can't get logged in. And Charles has some tips and tricks for you today to overcome that hurdle. We are also going to touch on a couple of things like accruals. It's the beginning of the year, and people are concerned about that. They want to make sure that they have their accruals starting the year off correctly, and that what is carried over from last year is accurately entered. So we are going to be covering that as well. With that introduction, my friend Charles, take it away.
Thank you very much, Saundra. And yes, I'm going to be covering the logging into Dash, but in order to do that, I'm going to have to log out of Dash. So I'm just going to click on log out right now. And so this is the web page, and it's like, sometimes it's hard to find this. We don't publicize our web page for our Dash portal simply because we want to make sure, we want to take every precaution for security as possible. So we basically hand that out to our clients when they're already logging in through Dash, and we don't like put it out there and announce it to people who are not with our service. And so, for instance, it is normally PCI-dash.com. All right. Now this is the full website address. You know, you can add in the /RPO/login/login.aspx. But what you do recommend is, well, first of all, that you use Google Chrome, and second of all, that you bookmark it. So I have it as my first bookmark right here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and type myself in here. So you will have three things that you should already know by now. Is you're going to have the username, the password, and the company code. All right. Now, what if you forgot your password? Well, you can easily just click on Forgot Password, and you just put in the username and the company, and it's going to send you an email with a replacement password. That replacement password is a temporary one, and it's going to be sent with a link. If you click on that link and then put in the temporary password, it'll then ask you to change. Now, here's the important thing that I've had questions on before. When it asks you for the old password, it means the most recent one that's active, which is going to be that temporary one from the email. And so that's when you will put that in, and then you will go ahead and change your password, and it allows you to do so. But I don't need that because I've memorized mine. I've made it easy to memorize mine. So 3, okay, and I don't need a company code because mine has a master level of access. I'm going to click on login, and it allowed me to log in. Okay. Now it didn't ask me for my PIN because I'm using the same URL. Okay, I've told it to remember this device, and it remembers devices by the URL. So it didn't ask me for my PIN. You can do that on the home computer that you have, but if you're like, say, you know, at the library and want to log in real quick, we don't recommend that you tell it to remember the device. You always ask for the PIN. Reason: additional security. Okay, and we don't want to be known around here for having less security than Google Mail, which also asks for PINs and so forth. So no, we take the confidentiality of your information very serious, which is why we have all these security steps. Now that I'm in, I have access to Dash, and that's great. This is how you log in. You can log out over here. You can even click on these gears to change the settings. Right? If you want to change what your email address is and things like that. So it's best to think about that in the future, plan ahead. So if you're going to expect that your email address is going to change, is you go ahead and click on the settings over here. The settings also allow you to enter the shortcut passwords for time and attendance if you have it, and employee self-service, so that basically you can log into them wearing Dash as a skin. Okay, and And with that being said, that's great. Now, what about your employees? Well, first I'm going to click on company, and then I'm going to click on user administration for ESS, which is down here. Let me show that to you again. Under ESS setup down here, user administration. And we'll get back to this in a second, but first I do want to show you, I'm going to click on this other one. This is the Dash website, right? This is the one that you log into. But it also has down here below it the employee self-service. So whenever you're asked by an employee, what is the website for ESS, and you don't know it off the top of your head, you should have the Dash website bookmarked. So you can click here and then you can click on employee self-service, and it changes to this one, which is for what the employees will be logging into. And then they could enter their username, password, or even register. Okay. Now, the other thing that you can do is if you have somebody who's joining and is new, is we can send you this as a PDF, and it is basically the guide for your employees to log in. It tells them, welcome to the MyReadyPay. It has the website. It has the steps of what they will be required to enter to register, and also to create their own username and password. And we can set one up where we can basically just go ahead and, oh, well, I had it in slideshow mode, click to exit. So where we can just change this to your company ID to make it easy for them to register. And so that we can send out to you if you request it, and then you can keep a copy and print it on demand for whichever employee is asking. Now, again, back to this, they go ahead and they register. They click on register an account and asks for the company number, which you'll be on that form, and last/business name. Now, this has been confusing to some employees because it says business name. They've been putting in the name of your company. The reason it says business name is because we are able to add in and maintain 1099 independent contractors under their business name. Right? Take their business name, their business EIN. So in those instances, if they were going to go into into the employee self-service, they put in the name of their business. But for just regular, ordinary employees, W-2 employees, they put their last name, and it needs to be exactly as it is set up in Dash. When you add the employee, it needs to match that. Okay, so if they change their name, if there's a hyphen, you have to be careful about any spacing, any of that. They need to have it match. The same with the last 4 digits of their social security number, but that should always match. And then their zip code. If they move, that has to match. So if they do move, they may need to update that as well in employee self-service. And then email. This is where they determine what email it should be that they go ahead and use. They can use their personal email. They can use their work email, either or. And then the employee sets up the username and their own password, and then they confirm and register. And that's how they register. Now, if we go back to the return to login page, what happens if they forget their username or they forget their password? They can click on forgot username, and they can put in their information here and submit, and they will be told what their username is. And if they forgot their password, they enter their username, and let's just say, and I hit go, and it's telling me I got an error code. Well, what it usually will tell people, what it usually will tell people is it will tell them that they'll ask them to either to send themselves an email or ask them to confirm the information. They have either choice. They can confirm the rest of their information, or they can just send themselves an email with a new password. And that would be basically how, your employees can handle that. What if they're going through all of that and they're still having trouble? That's where you can come in. So I'm clicking on Dash, back to Dash, and we're coming back to the user administration here. So I'm going to look at Acme here, because I can see if I click on the 1099 test is there's no black X. The black X will indicate that that person has registered. Anybody who doesn't have it has not. So if I click on Acme and then I scroll down, I can see that there is a personal email, and I can send an invitation to register. So you can do that for any of your employees who has not registered, and you have their email address, and then they register, they get set up, and then there's more stuff that you can do. So I'm going to pick somebody in particular, someone I've set up in here. You can put in their name and hit search. And I'm going to look at Sherlock Holmes. So he is already registered, and I can do several things. I could disable him or re-enable him if I disabled him. And then I can enable. I can change his password, or I could easily tell him, you know what, your username is right, is this. Go ahead and do the forgot password, and then they can set their own password. You can do a temporary password, and it's even marked to where they must change it at the next time they log in. You could change their email address if it's been changed. You can even change their security role. So this one is set up to be an ESS administrator, but most of your employees will be employee role. Who would you have as an administrator? Somebody who you would want to be able to approve time cards, approve changes to employees. Basically, anybody that would be able to have access to Dash themselves you can make to be an administrator in a security role here. The other thing you can do is if you have an outside service, right? That is doing the payroll. You can add admin users, right, to administrate employee self-service on your behalf if you basically farm it out to, say, your accountant or something like that. Okay, so that way you can add them without them having to be listed as an employee, because the list that we have here that we're looking at, that we do the search on, are all employees. Okay, cancel. I'm going to save. I'll go ahead and hit search. All right. Yes, it's okay. So all of these are all employees in the system in our demonstration site. So that's everything that you have the ability to do on behalf of your employees, and how your employees can administer their own employee self-service. Any questions on any of that?
Charles, before you move on, let's talk about the times that you might want to disable an employee. It might be when they've terminated. You might tell that terminated employee that they've got a week or two to, whatever you determine, to extract their payroll information, to maybe they have a W-2 in there they haven't printed out. You give them a period of time. And then once that period of time is over, then you go in and disable. Another time you might want to disable an employee is if they're on a leave of absence. Usually when people are on a leave of absence, they should not be doing anything work related. And ESS, while it's personal information, could be work related. So you might want to disable it at that time. That's something that you can check with your human resources person on the type of leave of absence they are on to see whether or not they should be able to get into ESS. So there are a couple of times when the disabled button would be used. Termination after a period of time, leave of absence during that period of time, and then they have to be enabled again. Or Charles, is there anything else that I've missed? Those are the two that we get most questions on.
Yes, there is one other thing that I've been getting some questions regarding, and that's two-factor authentication. So let me bring up Mr. Sherlock Holmes again. And there is two-factor authentication possibility. Now, the employee sets that up. It's one of the options that they can have when they're actually logged into employee self-service, ESS, and they can set that up to where it comes to their phone. But sometimes there's a problem where it's like, oh, I can't get I changed phones, I can't get that. You are able to reset the two-factor authentication so that it zeroes it out, and so that the employee can reset it as well. So you do have these different roles here that you can do as a Dash user. And this is one of the things that we have updated Dash on to do for you. It's something that's been added for all administrative users in Dash recently, like the last, I think, 6 months or so. And so you have these features that you can do this yourself, which enables you to act quicker on your employee's behalf, and it also enables you to do this from wherever is convenient. So it's like you get a notification that an employee is not having problems with employee self-service. It's ESS. You can go in here, just go into your laptop, log into the internet, log into Dash, go in here. Boom, re-enable them, change their password, reset their two-factor authentication, all of that, lickety-split, and they're good to go.
Perfect.
I forgot. The other thing we can do is with employee self-service, I just wanted to bring this up. We can, of course, help you with the administration of that, where we can make it that there are certain things that the employees can't change, that it requires you to change it, or there are certain things that they can change, but it requires approval, or just some things that they can change at will. And so you can do things like they can change their address, but it has to be approved at some point, or just completely block the direct deposit from something that they can change and require them to actually provide you with a document so that you would change the direct deposit for them on their behalf. So we have a lot of security features, and we can modify them specifically for you as the user, as the administrator, or the company, what security roles it's supposed to have. So we can do that on a company by company basis, depending upon what you need.
Exactly. And some of you may not have ESS or employee self-service. I'm happy to schedule a demonstration for you. Just put an email in the chat and I will schedule that with you. Basically, it's a personal portal that the employee registers for us, as Charles showed you, where they can retrieve their pay stubs and their W-2s. And as Charles mentioned, edit certain information as their life changes. It is cheaper than a postage stamp. It's only 55 cents per employee per payroll period. And if you have delivery, if you can get everybody on direct deposit, this will save you delivery. And then those pay stubs can be retrieved by the employees on their own in their own time, rather than coming to you when they're moving or they're applying for a mortgage and they need 6 months worth of pay stubs. It's a lot of time on your side to have to do that. Some employers prefer to have paper checks for their employees. That's what they want. And so ESS would be worth it if they wanted to get their W-2s quicker than what we mail them. So our W-2s were uploaded probably a week before you got them in the mail. So if they're Johnny on the spot and they want to get those taxes done to get that refund, then that's a benefit to them as well. Or they might need W-2s from years past. All right, Charles, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you. So I think that the other thing that we were going to be going over was accruals. And so there's a couple of things that we would need for accruals. And I brought up this sheet. This is the accrual setup checklist. So there's two parts to an accrual. One is setting up the company policy in the system. And then the second part is attaching it to an employee. So here, this is where we would send you this checklist to give us the information to set up your policy, because the policies in your manuals may not cover everything that we're capable of doing. As you can see, we would need, of course, the type of sick policy, because you can have like as many as you want. You can have vacation, sick, vacation full-time, vacation part-time, sick full-time, sick part-time, PTO as an overlapping policy for everything. I have set some up for remote days, or all sorts. It's flexible enough for every kind of policy that the employer, you are the client, you are our client, you are the employer, may want for their employees. And of course, it does include things like we can set up the required California sick policy, or even the sick policy that's required in San Francisco or any other locality within California, if it is more generous one than the state. And we can set those up if you are familiar with that. The statewide policy allows for either 24 hours on an annual award basis at the beginning of the year, or 1 hour for every 30 hours worked. We can do the 1 hour for every 30 hours worked. We can do the annual award. We can do all of that. So, and we even asks for the accrual method. We have annual, per pay period, hourly. We can set up to where it accrues a certain number of hours for every hour worked, right? I had that when I worked at Tower Records way back when. And then, is there a probationary period? We can set up a probationary period. Now, there's two things that will get confused in that term. People, some of our clients will ask for a policy that where it doesn't accrue anything for the first 3 months, and that is one where we set it up to not accrue until after they've worked there 3 months. So that is one. The probation is where they accrue, say, from the beginning, but they can't use, and that is a probationary period. And so we are able to set that up where those hours are sequestered, right? They're put aside, and then once those 3 months have passed, then they become available for the employee. And we can even make it to where the probation period hours show or do not show on the pay stub. And then we have things like the accrual table right here, where we can set different accruals based on length of service, right? And we even have explanations of the different sections, what the carryover is, what the max negative is, max used, accrued, all of that. And the total max, that one is tricky because that means that at no time can their available or their used be above that point. So we don't use that quite that often because that one, it gets tricky. And then the accrual year. What is the time frame used for the accrual's 12-month period? And that is so when we look at balance rollover, so when the balances should roll over in terms of what they've used. And this tells us that information. Also, how to handle negative balances, how it should appear on the check stub, accrual eligibility setup, how they should be notified as eligible, and even additional notes. So you complete that, and you send it back to us. And then we go in here on the company level and we set up the policy. Okay. And we have summons here for our demonstration purposes, right? So a vacation. And we take all that information and we code it in here. And we set up the advanced options. We set up the accrual table. We set up the probation and negative hours. So we can set that up. It should notify you. We can set up to where it should do that and all of that. Now, once we set up the policy, what's the second part? What's the part that you as the employer, as our client, would do? Is you would go to the employee and you would go to their time off and you would add the policy. You would select it, right? And then, now, here's the thing. We have adjusted length of service. What does that mean? If you have policies that are different for part-time, and this is just an example, a part-time versus a full-time, right? And so you wanted to show that all your part-time people are not eligible for vacation, but once they become full-time, they are. Well, the policies default to the hire date. And you don't want that with somebody who just went to full-time. You want to use the date that they started as a full-time employee. You can adjust the length of service by putting that full-time start date in here, and it will use that to calculate when they go on to the next level of accrual. So that's a very important thing to use. Also, the other thing that I found is that when clients are asking for where there's 3 months where there's no accrual, we can set it up on the policy where it doesn't start for 3 months. So you can attach the policy to them when you're hiring them. You don't have to wait 3 months to attach it to them here. You can just do it from the beginning. That way you don't have to have any reminders or anything like that. We set up the policy to do that for you. And so we also have overrides. Now, overrides are generally used. An example would be you have a contracted employee who in the contract has a rate of accrual that is different than the company policy. You can check that rate and put in what it is on a per pay period basis here. Or, well, actually, it depends upon what the main policy has as the accrual. Like I said, it could be hours, could be per pay period, could be annual, any one of those. We also have where it shows you the probation and it also shows you the available hours. Okay. And I'm just going to hit cancel on this thing. Now, we also have PTO history, and this is where it will show you on a check date by check date basis. Since this employee doesn't have, or this test employee does not have any policy set up, it's completely blank, but it will look like when you've looked at the pay history, looked at the check dates, for everybody under the pay history, and it will show you what the earned hours, the earned usage, and the earned balance was on a check date by check date basis. So if you have an employee who comes up to you and goes, I don't understand why my available hours is this, you can look at it and say, well, you used 14 hours last week, so this is why it's the way it is. And so there's that. So there's the two steps in basics is we set up the policy at the company level, and then you add the policy once it's there to the employee. And you also have the ability here to modify it specifically for that employee. Any questions?
Well, I don't see any. So Charles, you're doing a great job. Thanks for explaining what you're explaining. It's great. I think that our people are enjoying it. The next thing we were going to talk about, I think, if I'm incorrect, correct me. We were just going to address the recent deduction that our companies received because of the 2022 tax adjustment.
Oh, yes. That you're talking about the federal credit reduction.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up something. So I'm going to do FUTA credit reduction. So I've looked this up already.
Yeah.
And this is from the EDD website. Now, the reason I'm using this is most of you are basically California employers. Some of you may be out of state. Not all states are affected by this. It's only like 4 states that were impacted by this. And this website, on the EDD website, explains exactly what it was. So California employers fund regular unemployment insurance. So you read that here. There's 2 parts to unemployment. There's the state and the federal. And then the state part is where the benefit comes. That's where the benefits are paid out of. The federal part is for emergency loans to the states and also to fund the administration of the unemployment programs. That's the 2 different steps. And because of the pandemic, there are states that have had to take out emergency loans. California has an outstanding federal balance. It says right here, an outstanding federal balance for 2 consecutive years. And as a result, California employers will see an increase in their FUTA taxes. Why? Because when you have a state that is in good standing, no outstanding federal loans, and an employer that is in good standing, they've made all their unemployment tax payments on time, then there is a credit against the regular rate. And in fact, it mentions that right here. Generally, federal law provides employers with a 5.4% FUTA tax credit toward the 6% regular tax. So this is why this is called a credit reduction, because there are outstanding federal loans in California to basically fund unemployment in the state so that people could, eat, buy groceries, pay rent and all that for the period where we were shut down. Then that caused the credit reduction, and it's a credit reduction of 0.3%. They've reduced that credit of 5.4 to 5.1. Now, this is announced in November, so we knew this was coming, and we tried to get out notification to our clients, let them know this is coming up. And so on the 18th, we debited for the additional amount due. And as I said, it's 0.3%. Okay, so that is what you saw as the debits on your 2000 on your January 18th statements, and this is something that you probably should prepare for next year. Again, they don't announce which state this applies to until November. So keep a lookout for November for a notice from us, or you can go on to the EDD website to see if there's any news. I think the Department of Labor has that as well. The IRS also talks about the credit reduction, and the easy way to see it is FUTA credit reduction, and it's always a good idea to put the year. This is for 2022. So when you would look in November, you would look up FUTA credit reduction 2023, and it will tell you for 2023, these are the states impacted. This is the amount it's being reduced by. So all of that. Now, does anybody have a question regarding that particular thing?
Charles, you might want to copy that link and put it in the chat. As a payroll company, we were required to make this deduction because we do pay your unemployment taxes on your behalf. So it wasn't a choice. It was something that we had to do to follow the law. So we had a couple people saying, how come? And that's how come we were required to do so.
Yeah, okay. This wasn't one of our billing. This is a tax. Right. And this was a tax to make sure that this program remained solvent. Yeah. Right? Because we did go through a harrowing time the last couple of years, and we're getting through this. The last time this was during the economic recession of 2008. This also went into effect.
Okay, so that takes care of that. I'm glad we were able to do that public service announcement for you all to help you get a better understanding of what that was about. If you do have a question, I would suggest you talk to your CPA. And they can assist you with any other questions you might have related to that. We, as a payroll company, cannot give you advice. We are only here to work for you and do the services that we provide. That we're very happy you're part of our family. So thank you so much for that. All right. If there are no questions in the chat, I think that takes care of today. Let me give you a couple of highlights of what are coming up. We're going to be talking about terminations and how to classify employees next week. Sometimes with a new year, you have a reevaluation of your budget, and you might be needing to terminate employees, unfortunately, and we're going to show you how to do that. It's also a good time to clean up because we've noticed that in some of our accounts, you might have 10 people that you're paying, but you still have 48 people as employees. And we're going to show you where the active versus all employees button is and show you how to clean up the terminated employees so that you have accurate information at all times on your Dash portal. And then we're going to talk about on February the 9th, bereavement and leave codes. Last week, Linda Duffy gave us some new information about what qualifies as bereavement, for whom and for how long. That was covered last week, but we're going to reiterate that on the 9th of February. Also, we're going to talk about pre-tax and post-tax benefits. Charles is an expert in that area, and we might add a few more things. For you, this is your webinar, and we are building for the rest of the year. We've got some really good things coming up, but we would like some more topics that you have an interest in. So if you would like, please email me directly any topics. Chances are, if you're asking about it, others are as well. So your question will benefit everybody else who joins our webinar and maybe encourage others to attend as well. So I want to thank you for that in advance. So put your thinking cap on. What is it that causes you pain when you go into Dash? We don't want that. And what is it that you constantly are having to call us to help you with, like manual checks? It's probably one of the #1 calls we get. We're going to be covering that as well. So everybody, we want to thank you for being part of PayrollCentric's family. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoy these webinars. We hope that you have a wonderful day. And for everybody here, bye-bye for now.